Today, we're going to be comparing the homeless problem in Florida to the homeless problem in California. Both of these states have the largest homeless population in the United States. Both states also have a large population and landmass, so it only makes sense that they would both have a considerable homeless population. On the video footage, we're going to hop back and forth between Florida and California so you can get a distinct feel for what each one of these states is going through. Because of the nature of homelessness, it's really impossible to know the exact populations, but it's believed that California now has about 160,000 people living on the streets. However, these numbers are inconclusive since there's a lot of merit for counties to exaggerate or to reduce these numbers to match their narrative. Take the city of San Diego, California, which recently is going to pass an ordinance to ban tents from the cities. They calculated their city's homeless population at 6,500 and are going to implement changes for that number. However, the reality on the streets is that between 10 to 12,000 people reside within San Diego, California homelessness states, and that is a very conservative number. So while it is appearing that San Diego is going to do something about the massive number of people that are homeless, even the figures that they're using to make their plan to move forward does not accurately depict the real situation on the ground. And while there's a lot of emphasis on Skid Row and San Francisco in the media when it comes to homelessness, from my personal travels, I thought the number of homeless people in San Diego was visibly larger than in the other two cities that get much more media attention. Anybody residing in San Diego watching this video, I'd love to hear your opinion, but we all know that that number is closer to 10 to 12,000. 6,500 simply isn't the number. We really cannot rely on these analytics. It's a system that has failed us, and their distribution of information is questionable depending on their motive. All we have to go by is our travels, and I can tell you that San Diego, California, and their downtown homeless camps are definitely some of the most incredible things you're going to see in the United States. Let's hop on over to Florida, where the scenario looks a little different. Pasco County is a rural county just north of Tampa. The overdose death rate from narcotical use in this area is 3 times higher than the entire state of California by rate. Homelessness here takes a different image than it does in California. These are not tents located in the downtowns of cities. These are people living in the woods, far away from the eye of those passing on major highways. In these homeless camps, addiction, death, overdoses, and pure misery is the order of the day. Homelessness in Florida exists on a massive scale. However, due to the way the laws of this state are set up, anybody who's homeless has to be hidden and well encumbranced out of the way, where he will not catch the attention of law enforcement and receive charges like trespassing, open container, an onslaught of criminal charges that are predominantly given to people in a homeless state. Panama City, Florida is now also charging homeless people with felony dumping charges. In the state of Florida, being homeless means that you're incarcerated, persecuted, and marginalized from society because of your homeless state. Skid Row, Los Angeles, the most notorious homeless camp in the United States. You have to consider that the Los Angeles metropolitan area, home to over 15 million people, is also going to have a massive number of people with no homes. But homelessness in Skid Row is not a refugee camp, it's a lifestyle choice, and those who come to this particular homeless camp understand the nature of the place they're living and exactly what takes place within the confines of one of the largest homeless camps in the country. Homeless people are much more likely to be targeted by criminals than the regular person, and anyone living on these streets can be a victim of robberies, assaults. Women, the weak and vulnerable, are many times targeted, and these assaults can become very personal. Being in the downtown of the second largest city in the United States, it wouldn't be difficult for these people to find jobs, opportunities, and a way to escape their poverty. However, because of addiction and simply lifestyle choices, many people here don't make those changes. Key West, Florida, many of the homeless people here are living on boats, some abandoned by individuals, others destroyed by storms. Many of the adjacent islands to Key West, Florida have now become homeless camps where people use bicycles and canoes or small boats to go from the mainland to the smaller islands where they live in completely savage homeless camps. These homeless camps are many times on protected lands, and the ecological damage that these homeless camps are doing to the vulnerable ecological system of the Florida Keys, an ecosystem like no other, is difficult to even put into words. Homelessness taking a massive ecological hit. We hop into Fresno, California, a city that has one of the largest homeless populations by percentage of anywhere in the country. In this city, homelessness is everywhere in front of businesses and alleyways. The entire city feels like an open homeless camp. The debris generated by the homeless people and just the misery on their faces, many times sleeping in front of businesses and pretty much anywhere they find within the city of Fresno, California. You'll find that living in this city, homelessness is constantly in your face and the human misery that comes along with it ever present. It's just everywhere you go, whether you're going to a business or driving on the highway, there's always someone to look at in a homeless state. The city of Fresno is definitely one of the biggest problems in the United States that doesn't seem to have a resolution, since many people living in homelessness prefer a lifestyle of addiction and have no desire to do anything about it. Meanwhile, in a rural suburb of Orlando, Florida, we found a man who claims that he is going to do something about it. He built an entire house in a piece of land that is most likely zoned for public use, which means that he cannot be trespassed. With the new stance that the state of Florida is taking on homelessness, of giving homeless people felony dumping charges, it is questionable whether people like him, who take up a piece of land and pretty much build a house in the woods, will soon be able to catch a felony charge for doing so. But in the meantime, this man continues to literally make a home out of a wooded area. In Hollywood, California, the Walk of the Stars is what many people call it. The situation here is grim. Unfortunately, when people visit California, Hollywood is most likely one of the places they're going to visit and think that this is one of the best places in California. Little do they know, however, that Hollywood is actually one of the worst places in the entire state, giving tourists visiting California a distasteful idea of the state, assuming that if this is one of the best places in California, what would the worst places look like? Unfortunately, Hollywood, California today isn't the Walk of Stars, it's the Walk of Misery, where addiction and lifestyle choices, mental illness all combine, bringing a lot of people to a state that's deplorable to be broadcast on the city streets for everybody passing to see. Hollywood, California is definitely not as glamorous as you would think, and it's no wonder that if people visit California and see this, that they will assume that the rest of the state would be in the same condition. And truth be told, there's entire regions of California where the levels of homelessness are about as normal as anywhere in the United States. However, there's parts like Hollywood where it's embarrassing. Miami-Dade County, a place people go to for beaches, incredible vacations, warm weather during the winter. Unfortunately, on the outskirts of Miami, aiming towards the Everglades, swamps infested with alligators, snakes, lizards, pythons, mosquitoes on levels you have no idea. The misery that these people go through, with many biting insects like horseflies, yellow flies, spiders. The misery of living in these homeless camps adjacent to the Florida Everglades is about misery in person. The murder rate in Florida City, where this particular homeless camp is at, is the highest in Florida, on par with places like Compton and Oakland. Many of the homeless residing here are registered offenders. We hop on over to Santa Cruz, California. Homelessness here is very prevalent and scattered throughout the entire city. Sometimes the tourists do not take note, except for the fact that everywhere you look are homeless people. These homeless people are going to take advantage of the wooded areas around the city to hide in creeks, rivers, areas where they're not going to be seen. However, in the daytime, as you're walking around the city or driving through the city, you'll notice the signs of a massive homeless population. And in fact, despite its natural beauty, scenic oceans, palm trees, and mountains, Santa Cruz, California has a massive problem. Homelessness here is everywhere to be seen. Many of the homeless people that you're going to see in Santa Cruz, California are clearly dealing with addiction, as this person here bent over, clearly addicted to fentanyl. Very sad situation. Hopping back into Florida, Sarasota, another beautiful beach destination on the north side of the city, is a massive area of poverty, and homelessness is normal here as well. Both Sarasota and Manatee County have disturbingly high overdose death rates, and it's not uncommon to see people in Sarasota and Bradenton on the streets in questionable state. The police radio in this area along Washington is constantly being flooded with overdose reports. This is also a very affluent area, and a lot of the rich people don't want to see homeless people sleeping on the sidewalks when they're going to downtown restaurants. I met one particular person who appeared to be a homeless person, but on closer examination, he might have easily been an undercover police officer, and it seems like there's definitely some tensions between the law and the homeless people in Sarasota, Florida, as the law is pressured by the residents that are wealthy and affluent to make the homeless people disappear. Nonetheless, they're going nowhere, and despite Sarasota being a great city, there's a lot of misery and poverty, and nobody seems to help the homeless people except for people like me. You'd think with as much money as there'd be here, something could be done. San Jose, California, a large homeless encampment here, a little bit more elaborate with RVs and vehicles, was asked to be evicted, but not at the will of San Jose, California City, but the Federal Aviation Association decided that having homeless people burning dump truck tires and crack pipes near an airport was unacceptable. So they had to evict one of the largest homeless camps in the country. All of these vehicles, as unsightly as they are now going to be moved to likely other smaller parts of California. You're just pushing the problem from one place to the next and really never finding a solution. And it's interesting that what made this camp be disassembled wasn't exactly the city of San Jose not wanting it, but the federal government saying you can't have this crap near an airport. Despite what you've heard, not every city and municipality in California is homeless friendly. We encountered parks that had benches, seats, toilets, and even washing stations that were very exactly created to make sure that they could not be utilized by homeless people, with specific types of materials on benches and bathrooms to ensure that homeless people are not able to use public resources like parks as places for them to bathe. So while the narrative continues that California is welcoming to homeless, I saw a lot of things in California that definitely were not welcoming to homeless. A lot of cities and counties do the best they can to discourage them, and businesses absolutely. In Tampa, Florida, we ran into a man who lives on Interstate 75. Yes, directly in the median of the interstate. You may have driven through Tampa, and the last thing you would imagine is that in the median of the interstate are homeless camps underneath the highway where people are living, toilets, baths, like entire cities. And as you drive through the city of Tampa on the interstate, you'll see no traces that underneath you and in the grasses and medians that are next to the highway and adjacent to it are entire cities of people living in the middle of an interstate. And who's responsible for these camps? Is it the Department of Transportation? In Florida, it is a cat and mouse game between the homeless people and different agencies on who's responsible for fixing the problem. Regardless, the only thing that definitely has to take place is secrecy. El Centro, California, openly, unlike in Florida, homelessness here is shameless in front of businesses. The homeless people set up their camps, and despite the fact that a meal at a restaurant in this city is very expensive, as you enter California and see the city of El Centro, you are shocked at the amount of homelessness and misery and criminology that exists in this particular city, small in size, but definitely fearsome. In this particular city of California, There's no exact effort to try to prevent the homeless people from taking over businesses, and it seems like the business owners here are at the will of homeless people who do whatever the crap they want to. We hop on over to Fort Myers, Florida, claimed to be one of the fastest cities in the country, where homeless camps come adjacent right to new luxury developments. Do the people that buy these new homes in Fort Myers realize that just a few meters away from their brand new construction are people living in the woods? Many times now, these empty lots where the homeless people have camps are being demolished, which means that the homeless are being displaced to build new luxury homes. By the time these new residents of Florida find out that just a few hundred meters from their home is a homeless camp in the woods, it's too late because they've already purchased their property. And perhaps it's this real estate growth in Florida that has forced the government to make sure that the homeless people are well hidden so it doesn't inhibit their financial progress. The growth that they claim and are so proudly bragging about how Florida is growing is on top of the ruins of homeless camps that are being displaced. And it seems that with the new laws that are taking place in Florida, more efforts will happen to ensure that the homeless people are even further marginalized, pushed further away from these construction sites, so that the people that are moving into Florida cannot see the misery that the people who've been in Florida have been dealing with for a very long time. And perhaps it's this growth in real estate and real estate scam of getting people from other states to move to Florida that has forced so many municipalities in Florida to do everything they can to hide their homeless problem. Where in California, it's the code enforcement itself that's preventing new construction from taking place, because both Florida and California are amazing states that people want to move to for weather and for natural beauty. However, the state of Florida has chosen one route to control its population, and the state of California has chosen another. Both of these states have increasing real estate prices, and the state of Florida, dismal salaries. This combines to make it difficult to live both in Florida and California. Because of their perfect weather, many people continue to move to both of these states. Apart from Hawaii, California has the highest real estate values in the country, and that continues to be evidence that people do want to live there. If California wasn't desirable, their real estate prices wouldn't be so high. When these people sell their houses to move to other states, you bet there's a buyer in California that will pay millions of dollars for a simple property. What is there in California that makes people want to be there? Clearly the weather, economical opportunities for those who have a better education. Well, what about San Francisco, Jose? We hear so much about homelessness in San Francisco. I'm sure they have a huge problem. While in San Francisco, I couldn't find enough footage of homelessness to even make a video on the topic. And it seems that the real reason many cities are attacking San Francisco is because they actually have some of the highest incomes of any large city in the country. In fact, a city like San Francisco is the envy of any city, with the highest incomes, highest real estate values, lowest murder rates, lowest crime rates. A city like San Francisco is really an embarrassment to most other cities in the United States. Take Atlanta, Charlotte, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, Louisville, Memphis, Baltimore, St. Louis. You can just pick any city out of the map, and their income and safety analytics will never come even close to what San Francisco has to offer. Really, San Francisco is what every American city should be, with strong real estate values, triple-digit incomes, and of course, very low murder rates. Not as low as cities in Europe, but almost good enough. I should also mention that San Jose, while having a much larger visible homeless problem, does have one of the lowest murder rates in the entire country, on par with cities in Europe. But of course, living in an ultra expensive city with high education standards isn't for everybody. This is a place for people who are young, industrious, have money, have businesses. Clearly, not everybody's able to just move to San Francisco and live there because the living standard is so high, it's difficult to incorporate into. Even the Tenderloin neighborhood, which is where we're driving through right now, honestly didn't look as bad as San Jose, San Diego, and many of the other cities we saw in California. And it's interesting why a city with just good income, real estate, and safety analytics would be the punching bag of so many people throughout the country as a pun of how bad California is, when in reality, San Francisco is actually one of the nicest cities. Compare San Francisco to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's murder rate is something like 4 times higher. Its weather unpleasant and unwelcoming. And while Cincinnati has a good economy, it just can't compare to what living in San Francisco has to offer. Here, as we drive through the Tenderloin, you can see a few homeless people here or there, but it's nothing on the scale of what we're being told in the media. Meanwhile, in Tallahassee, Florida, despite geographically being a smaller place and population, homelessness is widespread, and quite literally, there was homeless people sleeping on the sidewalk right in front of our hotel. You really wouldn't expect a small city like Tallahassee to have people sleeping on sidewalks in front of hotels. Entire business centers that are abandoned clearly are going to make perfect hiding places for homeless people, not afraid to venture inside and catch a trespassing charge. Both Florida and California have a serious homeless problem, and to dispute which state has a worse problem is clearly just a distraction. It would serve you, the viewer, very well to travel to these places and see these situations with your own eyes, rather than relying on a political agenda-based media to tell you what you need to believe. Many people even warned me about visiting California because of how prevalent crime was there. But if you look at analytics, both murder rates and crime are actually higher in Florida. How have people become so blind to the reality that these are national trends? And states like California and Florida, being larger centers of population, are nothing more than a good representation of what's going on in the rest of the country. A country where increasing real estate prices and increasingly laws that allow for rents to go higher without any type of warning, like the state of Florida, which just now introduced a new law that allows renters to jack up prices with no explanation, or even time frame notice requirements like before. We can assume that as things continue the way they're going, both Florida and California are going to continue to struggle with homelessness,